Hi, this is Mike Young with Noble Warriors. You're about to hear a message entitled The Sex Test, presented by Steve Sabol. Steve is a presenter with Knights of the 21st Century from Lebanon, Pennsylvania. This equipping workshop was part of the Iron Sharpens Iron Men's Conference hosted by Noble Warriors at Grace Church of Fredericksburg on Saturday, March 9th, 2013 in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I pray the message will challenge and encourage you as you walk with Christ and lead your family.
We're taking orders for the manslayer now. Anybody want to fill out? It's 1995. But seriously, guys, just thought I'd do a bit of an icebreaker. Honored to have you in the session today entitled The Sex Test, like I set up on the stage a few moments ago, the only test we don't have to study for. But I think I understand why we called it that. There's little room for argument that there is a real struggle and a problem with male sexuality today. It's just an amazingly painful thing to see where culture has brought us, where we brought ourselves concerning our sexuality. So let me tell you a couple things up front. What coming to this seminar doesn't mean you're a pervert. It doesn't mean you're an idiot. It just means that you understand this is powerfully important and you want to start to view your own sexuality better, and perhaps, assuming some of you are leaders in your church, that you want to take that new understanding, if indeed you find something new here today, back to your brothers in your own circle and make a difference there. One of the things I like to do, I teach Knights of the 21st Century live 5 times a week in addition to pastoring a pretty good sized church full time, which makes my schedule kind of interesting. And then when I'm doing travels like this, it gets even more interesting. And what I like to do is I like to show clips from movies that a lot of guys have already seen or probably should have seen. And the reason we do that is because guys are not good at engaging at emotion except what's like a sporting event, on our team's, scoring or whatever. And emotion is important, so sometimes the clips we show gets us to feel, even if it's humor or disgust or anything like that. And what it happens on the heels of that, then our retention level goes up. I'm choosing a movie by the name of What Women Want, with Mel Gibson. I'm sure most of you have seen. That's kind of an old movie. Let me just tell you right now, Nick Marshall, his character is the guy you don't want to be. In Knights of the 21st Century, we call him the spandex male. The guy that looks down to see if he's a man, not within. The guy that's into looking good, not being good. The guy that's into using. When he comes into a room, he sucks the air out of it because it's always about him. Uses women, uses guys. And that's Nick Marshall. And so this little brief clip comes in the beginning of the movie because I want you to hear how the women in his life describe him. And the sad thing is that same description can be applicable to a lot of guys maybe even somebody sitting here. Watch a scene from What Women Want.
You know the expression, a man's man? A man's man is the leader of the pack, the kind of man other men look up to, admire, and emulate. A man's man is the kind of man who just doesn't get what women are about. Nick, my ex-husband, is the ultimate man's man. I probably never should have married him. I don't think he understood a thing about me.
So, this is Nick Marshall's office. Want a peek? Don't worry, he never gets in before 10. He'll send you on more errands than anyone in the entire company, because he can't do anything for himself. He's like this total bachelor and the least politically correct guy in the universe. He's the king of all the TNA ads that we do. You want babes in bikinis? He's your man. My dad? How can I best describe it? He's always been like an uncle to me. Yeah, Uncle Dad.
Although Nick was a charmer, completely irresistible at first. Which feeds into the whole man's man thing. You know about Nick's mother, right? Because once you understand about Nick's mother, you understand Nick.
There you go. We learn a lot of things about Nick in that little blurb. That he likes to be taken care of, he's helpless, that he's a charmer, that he uses women, and even his own daughter doesn't respect him. And it all goes back to the way Nick Marshall deals with his sexuality. I'll show you a couple pictures up here. This guy on the left and this lady on the left is yours truly, almost 44 years ago when we got married. That's my beautiful bride, 44 years, Nancy Beverly Sabol. And now, the reason I showed that picture is because you can see my wife here. You know, she's tearing up, and we're doing the dance and the reception, and she's got a diamond ring, and her family's all there, and her friends are all there, and it was just this whole moment. And it's like, I'm really getting married. I'm going to start a family. That's what's going on in her mind. What do you suppose might be going on in this guy's mind? You know?
Get the reception.
Yeah. I had a hotel room at the Holiday Inn, which was right next to this reception hall that I just couldn't wait to get to. See, my wife was a virgin when we got married, so there was none of that. So there was a lot of surprises to unpack that night, you know. And it's like, come on, we've been here for 2 hours already. But here we are today. Here we are today, and my attitudes towards my wife and our sex life has totally changed. And we're going to unpack some of that today. And we're going to call it the sex test. And again, when you say the sex test, we're not going to ask your knowledge about certain things about sex. But the sex test comes in like this, because we're going to do a word association up front real quick, right? So, you know, somebody will say black, another bunch will say white, one will say up, the other say down, you know. So we're going to do that, right? So see how we can do with that. All right. What do you think? I'm going to think of the quarterback.
Tom Brady.
What?
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. Oh, you think of people. Okay.
Football.
Leader. Okay. How about just football? I'm a simple man, right? All right. How about this one? TSA. Airport, right? Airport. I think of airport. See if you think of the ones I do. Trout. Oh, man, we got that one. Yes. Virginia is filled with fishermen. Spark plug. Car or engine. All right. So we got that one. Bow season. Hunting. Yes. Hey, you're a hunter? You like
yes,
bow
hunter.
Are you a bow hunter? So you think of that one, right? Hammer.
Word time.
Yeah, hammer time. But other, huh? Nails. Thank you. Got nails. All right. Now sex.
Fun test.
Fun test. I'm going to throw a word up there that's going to become the total foundation of this whole session today. And when I was first exposed to this material over a year ago, it totally revolutionized the way I looked at my sexuality. And it's a word that, you know, we can go around each room and say, what do you think when you think of sex? And you're not going to say most of what you think about sex when I ask you that, but you'll come up with some kind of answer. I'll guarantee you, I'd be very surprised if anybody thought of this word. Honesty. Honesty. And we're going to teach you today to associate the word honesty with your sexuality from this day forward. So let's go unpack some of this together. What does the lack of associating the word sexuality with honesty mean? All right, so if I don't associate honesty with my sexuality, I'll revert back to the way I thought about it growing up. Now, how were you guys? Now, I didn't get saved. I didn't accept Christ as my Savior until I was almost 25 years of age. And up until then, from 16 to 25, I played in rock bands. So I don't need to give you a whole lot of details about my life, right? Even though I was married for 7 years when I got saved, all right? So let me just tell you, when I was, before I got married, and for a few years, even after I got married, there was not a whole lot of honesty with my sexuality. For instance, when I was asking a girl out on a date, I would say, hey, would you like to go out with me Friday night so I can grab your breasts later on in the evening? But although I would never say that, that's what my hopes were. I wasn't being honest. By the way, I don't recommend you to do that anyway. But even in my marriage with Nancy, 44 years, a lot of those years, I would do things, even in the context of marriage, hoping to get payback. How many times have I thought, I'm going to buy her a box of her favorite chocolates or a bouquet of flowers or something, perfume, and I'll bring it home, and she'll say, oh, it's so thoughtful of you, sweetheart, and kiss me on the cheek, and that was it. It's time to go to bed, honey, good night. Roll over, it's like, whoa. I was being honest. And it kind of made my gift stink, you know what I mean? The motivation stunk, all right? So what happens when we don't associate honesty with our sexuality? Letter A, honesty and sex are rarely associated together, and as a result, there is significant misinformation about sexuality. Think about it. How'd you learn about sex? I didn't learn it from my parents, I'm from the, I was born in 1950, and so, and my family, my mom and dad were really, just say dysfunctional as parents. up until they split when I was 12 years of age. So I didn't hear from them. But I can tell you one of the first conversations I heard about sexuality, one of my guys on my block, his name is Andy Bidlingmeyer, we had this place down the road from our house, so we called the swamp. And what it was a big excavation dig, where they dug out a foundation for a huge building that never finished. They never started. So it was just like this big hole in the ground. It would have water in it, and reeds would grow up. But it was like a swamp, man. You got water and you got rocks. And so we made forts, and we'd have stone fights. We'd throw rocks at each other and try to kill each other, And so it was a really cool place. So one day we're in a fort talking, and Andy Bidlingmeyer, he's going to give me a lesson on sex education. And he begins to tell me that a part of a man's body goes inside a part of a woman's body, and something comes out, and then a baby gets born. And because of my lack of knowledge and understanding, my misinformation, I thought a guy urinated inside of a woman. I mean, that's how it started, and I was about 11 years old. There's all kinds of misinformation when you lack honesty. Jesus said this, and actually I think I had a scripture up there. Here it is. I put it in the wrong place. Jesus said, the thief's purpose is to kill, to steal, to kill, and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. So I believe the enemy wants to steal and kill and destroy what God intended for this unbelievable gift from him called our sexuality. Okay? So number two, true satisfaction is lacking in a lot of our sexual expression. What I basically mean by that is that when we are dishonest about our sexuality, we don't know what is satisfying our mate, or if she's even being honest with us. There's just all kinds of deception going on. And by the way, that word we heard this morning, man, I'm buying that USB. I'm going to go home and unpack that. That sermon was absolutely amazing. And I've been doing this stuff for a lot of years, and there was too many insights for me to write fast enough. It's like, wow, if I had a hammer, I'd be handing it to you, because I got my hammer moment. It was really good stuff, But again, Adam and Eve, they were naked and both naked and not ashamed. Now, I think I'm just going to add another layer to what that means when they're naked. It wasn't necessarily or just exclusively talking about their lack of clothing, which I believe is included in that, but it means nothing hidden. When you're naked, there's nothing hidden, right? Now, if I was standing before you naked today, and that would be a totally unbelievably painful experience for you and me, but there's nothing hidden, man. You can't. There's no such thing as a concealed weapon when you're standing up there naked, right? And so nothing is hidden. So I think that what is so weird about this picture is that I don't see a whole lot of genuineness on it. We intentionally chose this photo as a backdrop for our slides today. Because, she's in La La Land, she's got the ring over here and holding flowers, and he's got, he scares me the way he's looking there. It's like.
He's watching the game.
Yeah, he's what? Watching the game. Right?
He's looking behind her.
Okay, yeah, he's looking right through her, right? To his favorite football player or whatever. Or some other girl, right? You guys are you're on the right page with me, but. We chose that picture because it doesn't communicate honesty. I mean, everybody's just playing their role, okay? Here's another one. I got these all mixed up. I'm sorry about that. Relational conflict surrounding sexuality is prevalent. There's conflict. I mean, I'm not going to take a show of hands or ask for you to volunteer information, but I'll guarantee you more than one time if you're married, you've had more than one intent. My wife and I, we're spiritual. We don't argue. I call it intense fellowship. Okay. We argue. And how many of those arguments were over my dissatisfaction about our sex life and as well as hers? And so relational conflict surrounding that. I want you to know something that's hard for me to tell you. Every girl I went out with, I tried before I got saved. I tried to go all the way. That was my goal. And I would go to every base she'd let me get to. I would never force. I was a gentleman pervert. But whatever base she let me go to, I'd go to it. I allow myself to believe that she wanted it too, because that's the way I justified the guilt feelings I was feeling about what I was doing. And the hardest reality was I was scaring them while trying to use my God-given gift of sexuality in an inappropriate way. So you're going to have all kinds of conflict. Remember what James said in chapter 4? He said, what is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? So when you take what God has birthed that is holy and just and righteous and pure, and you corrupt it with the fallen sin nature and exert it through that, then you wind up doing a lot of conflict. Here's another one. Sexuality has been separated from its intended purpose. All right? What's the intended purpose of sexuality? Give me some feedback. What do you think God created sex for? What was his rationale behind it? What is God's purpose for sexuality? All right, so just simple reproduction, right? Which, by the way, everybody in this room is here because somebody had sex with somebody else at some point in your, like 9 months before you were born. So that's part of it. Anything else?
Intimacy.
Intimacy, okay. Anything else?
Well, I was going to say, he created us so that we could experience something with our wives that would really be as close in the natural to what really happens in the spiritual.
Right. So it's like an illustration externally of something that goes on internally with a deep, intimate relationship. All right. How often do you think that happens between a man and a woman?
Not as often.
Not as often as I should. Absolutely, I agree with you. Let me throw some of the things I would share. Obviously we do it because it feels good. If it didn't feel good, we wouldn't be having this seminar. But there'd be no problem with it because we don't tend as guys to do anything that doesn't feel good voluntarily. So pleasure. There is this thing called release when a guy experiences an orgasm. Everybody here knows what that's about. There's that sense of this like tension is relieved, and we're just talking about biological things here, and then reproduction, which already came up. Now let me just tell you one thing right here. All three of those things, we're talking about a human male's sexuality, but the same thing can be said about two dogs on the street. At this point, right? But then there is oneness in marriage. I think some of you had touched on that in your own way. Oneness in marriage, acting out physically of the connection that takes place at all other amazing levels between a man and a woman. But a lot of guys never equate this. God worship. God worship. Do you know what Christ calls us in the Bible? He's coming back for his bride, not his wife. If I take you back to that first picture, that guy that doesn't look anything like me today, because the hair that's not turning gray turned loose, you know what I mean? But it's a totally different guy. But he's coming back not for a wife, but for a bride, and that has a whole different feel. It's like honeymoon intensity, and that's not sexual per se, but I believe when we men engage our wives properly as God ordained with our sexuality, it is worship. Now, every time I share that in a seminar, I have to give this disclaimer. You don't go home tonight and say, hey, I sat in a class with this guy, his name's Steve Sabol, and he's telling me that I need to worship tonight. So, that stinks to high heaven, But it's true nonetheless. Paul said this. He said, whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Well, all means our sexuality too, right? It's part of who we are, and we can worship God with that. And so again, don't go home tonight and use me as an excuse.
There'd be a lot of worshiping going on.
Right? It'd be a lot of, and you guys can thank me later. All right, number 5. There are many examples of out of control sexuality. We all know that, right? We read the papers. We hear all the perversion, and there's voyeurism. Pornography is voyeurism. If you're going to get sucked in deeper and deeper. You know what the problem with addictions among many things, whether it's chemical addictions, sexual addictions, pornography addictions, it's the law of diminishing returns, which means what once gave you the buzz today is going to take 2 or 3 times as much tomorrow or next week, whether it's drugs or pornography. And that's why a guy starts out with Playboy or Hustler. I guess they're not even in vogue anymore. That's what it was when I was a kid. But it starts out with regular, and then it winds up with all kinds of perversion because the law of diminishing returns. When you take something out of its created ability, created purpose. In fact, here's what Paul said. He said, therefore, remember God said this in his word about how people misuse their sexuality. Now, most of us are students of the word. We know that the primary focus here is same-sex activity, but same-sex activity is a perversion of God's created design for sex. So that's just one variety of it, right? Therefore, God gave them over to in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie. So God had something in mind when he created us sexual creatures, but we've changed it. We think we know better, kind of like what Eve did and Adam did, who we heard from our brother earlier. Bobby preached an awesome message. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever to be praised. Amen. So there's no. Number 6, a lot of pseudo-sexual activities have developed. Now, pseudo is a fancy word for fraudulent. There's a lot of fraudulent sex going on in our culture. Fetishes. So as we step out from underneath what God has designed for our sexuality, it becomes dishonest. Do you know that 1 out of 5 guys are going to be sexually abused before their 18th birthday? And many believe that number is much higher because guys, unlike girls, it's hard enough for girls, but guys even more to even come out and talk about it. 3 out of 5 ladies. I happen to be married to a beautiful, wonderful woman, and I didn't learn until we were married for almost 15 years, and I was 4 years into our first church pastorate when I realized she was horrifically sexually abused by a much older brother from the age of 8 to the age of 13. I never knew that. And I saw firsthand the emotional, spiritual, and psychological damage that jerk perpetrated on my bride when she was a vulnerable woman. To this now, she's come a long way. She's one of the most courageous women I've ever met, and a lot of those wounds have healed. But I have to be very careful. I never approach her in a way that reminds her of what happened back then. You know, making promises and not deliver, or making promises just to get something, because that's probably what she endured. But a lot of pseudo activities have taken place. Number 7, women generally are fearful of and have been hurt by male sexual expression. It always hurts the woman more than the man. You ever notice that? Let's just get real as guys, right? So there seems to be a rash of these more than I've ever remembered. And some people believe it's only because it's getting reported more. But, you know, you have like a 25-year-old beautiful female teacher, and she gets busted for having sex with one of her 16-year-old students. Boys, right? There would have been a time in my life when I was 16 where that would be, you know, a fantasy come true. You know what I mean? And it's sick and it's wrong. I'm not rebranding it. But when we hear it happen between a 40-year-old male teacher and a 15-year-old girl, a whole different feel to it, isn't it? Because I think even intrinsically we realize that sexuality, male sexuality, can wound a woman more than a woman's sexuality can wound a man. And so therefore, a lot of women are fearful of male sexuality. Number 8, males have limited their ability to achieve manhood. If you make manhood about the size of a body part, or what you conquer in bed, or what you conquer in a back seat, or how many notches on your gun, you're not a man. You are what we call it in Knights, a spandex man. Okay? We have 15 manhood principles we teach, and all of you guys got one of our 15 principles in one of those colorful cards. You didn't all get the same one. We kind of spread it around. But the number 1 principle is males are born, men are forged. So when you were born, a nurse or a doctor, of course today they know before you're born. Back when I was born, you know, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, they didn't have that technology. You had to wait until the baby was born to figure out what it was. So when I came out of my mother's birth canal, the nurse or the doctor spread my legs and said, male. But that does not automatically equate to becoming a man at some magical point. It has to be intentional. Males are born, men are forged. So let's start being honest with each other about our sexuality. All right? Number 9, sexuality has become relegated to a selling technique. We heard Bobby talk about that. You know, I could say one phrase, actually 2 words, I think. Maybe it is 1 word. But anybody know the phrase "Go Daddy"? We have Super Bowl party in my church every year on a Sunday night. February 6th it was this year, I think, or 5th, whatever. And I always have to protect my people from the commercials. And a lot of them are just amusing and clever, and you know, and I capture some of them and show them at Knight's presentations. You know, it's kind of like an icebreaker we did at the beginning. But GoDaddy always connects a woman's body part to their product. And it took me a couple of years to realize what they're even selling. I think it's something about domain names or something like that, you know. But sex sells, and it's sad. You know, I like to sit down with the CEO of and executives of GoDaddy and say, hey, do you know what you're doing in contributing to the demoralizing and diminishing of man's character in the country? Don't do it that way, you know. If I was looking for a domain name, I'd go anywhere else but there to get it. Only because, you know, I cop an attitude.
You want to know how low it's gotten?
How?
There was a show that I was watching last night, and we TiVo most of our stuff and spin through the commercials, but there was a cat food commercial that was using sex to sell it.
Interesting. Sad. Tragic and sad. And but you know what, guys? You know, again, Bobby nailed it on the head again. The buck stops here. If it didn't work, they wouldn't use it. Somebody study, and if they can connect a sensual image or thought with their product for a male audience, the way we're wired, we're going to automatically gravitate towards that product. So maybe we can be part of the solution, right? So number 10, God has become offended. The God of the universe is hurt by what you just said, brother. Is hurt by the fact that sex sells. So God designed something very sacred and holy. It is to be practiced honesty and fullness and freedom. It can be one of the greatest experiences you have on earth, but we have made it a dirty, out of control, destructive force. How many of you, there's a lot of ado going on about the Bible series on the History Channel. I don't know if any of you watched it last week. I think they've done it very, very well. So much so I've done a lot of research and got a lot of advanced previews of it, and I'm actually encouraging my people to watch it. I'm actually preaching a series of sermons that prepares them for the evening's broadcast and trying to get them thinking and watching and visualize. But I think they really, did you remember the part last week where they were talking about Sodom, Gomorrah, and Lot, and the angel? By the way, what's up with that Ninja Turtle angel? You know what I mean? What's up with that? It was like, whoo, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's like, hey, it could have happened that way, right? It's cool. I mean, take some editorial liberty there. But that whole context there in Genesis chapter 19, the angel says, we are about to destroy the city completely. The outcry against this place is so great it has reached the Lord, and he has sent us to destroy it. Now, we think of Sodom and Gomorrah, and our minds tend to go to one type of particular sexual behavior, but I believe we are the ones that categorize sin. We're the one to say, a guy that has dalliances with other women when he's married, he just can't keep it in his pants, and we kind of wink at it. But when someone has another form of sexual expressions, we see it as an abomination, and indeed is. But you know what? Sexual perversion is sexual perversion. Any way you deviate from God's created purpose for sex is equally offensive to God, and God becomes offended by our sexuality. All right? I want to show you another scene from What Women Want. This one is where he walks into a coffee shop, and he's hitting on this barista by the name of Lola. Now, we're going to hear a lot of words coming out of Nick Marshall, like, oh, you're so stressed, you need someone to help you to relax. Nick's only interested in one thing. There's no genuine care there. There's no honesty in what he's doing. Watch the scene from What Women Want.
They non-fat, thick foam, wet cap, no lid. Half cat, curly, non-fat, thick foam, wet cap, no lid. So, when you find out? Today, I think, unless I didn't get it, and then I will just never find out. I'm sure I didn't get it. They were looking for an Earth Mother type. I overheard the director say I was more space cadet. I'm an actress. I can be whatever you want. Is that true, can you? Oh, it better be true. Otherwise, I'm stuck playing Dipsy Coffee Shop Girl for the rest of my life. Fun. Hi, Nick. Hi.
Oh, Lola, my love. When are you gonna let me buy you dinner?
Nick, I don't know why you don't believe me. I'm not your type. Trust me on this one. Cappuccino, extra foam, taller grande.
Grande. Or at least I like to think so.
Next.
Rumor has it that I'm getting some really big news at work today. Why don't you at least come out with me, celebrate? I'll buy you a cup of coffee.
Ammo to you. I work in a coffee shop. Hi, what can I get you?
I'll take it. You want me to stop asking you out, Lola? Sorry, this will just take a sec. Because, Lola, if that's what you want, I'll stop. All you have to do is give me the word and I'll stop.
Yes, I'm gonna give you the word. Because I'm an actress, or at least I'm trying to be one. I'm trying to concentrate on that. And so, it would be a good thing if you wouldn't mind stop asking me out.
You seem so stressed.
I am. I'm stressed. I have a lot on my plate.
So let's not talk about this now. Why don't I meet you here, say tomorrow, 10:30?
Okay, that would be good.
So that's the date?
It's a date. Thank you.
Sir, that was inspiring.
Wow.
Sad, isn't it? Sad. Now, Nick Marshall's a noble guy. He was really concerned that Lola was hungry. He wanted to take her out for dinner, right? Nick Marshall's a noble guy. He's really concerned about her stress levels and wants her to relax and just have. We see it, right? I mean, this is blatant. Some of that stuff that goes on between men and women today is more subtle, but sometimes we need a caricature to get the real message, right? Let's go to letter B. A godly man brings the concepts of honesty and sexuality together and establishes harmony between them. And as a result of learning to include honesty with sexuality, a man, number one, must reject some behaviors that are expressed in a less than honest and truthful way. Okay? Must be expressed in ways that are, and eliminate ways that are less than truthful. So that means no more one-night stands, guys. There's no truth in that. You know? They are done right now. I don't care who you are. In the movies and in real life, the woman always asks after that kind of encounter, will you respect me in the morning? Will you call me in the morning? We kind of laugh at that because they know when they're being used. One thing I want you to understand, guys, and this is I want to preface this remark with an acknowledgement that it's a broad brushstroke and an oversimplification, but it gets us thinking on the right lines. Women give sex to get love. Men give love to get sex. Now again, the goal is to switch that around and everybody meet the way God has intended us to meet. But women give sex to get love. So when she gives sex and doesn't get love, she's devastated. And she feels used. That's why, guys, I'm absolutely honest with you today. There was a lot of and again, I got married when I was 18, so it wasn't a whole lot of history. But even the first 4 or 5 years after I got married, when I wasn't a Christian, I did some things I'm really ashamed of in violating of my marriage covenant, okay? But a lot of it sprung out of the fact that I thought that virility and manhood was proven by how many people you could conquer in that particular arena. But you know what? Remember what Paul said in chapter 13 of 1 Corinthians? He said, when I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child, but when I grew up, I put away childish things, okay? Number 2 is challenged to discover new elements of himself beyond his sexual expression. Why is it that we work so hard at functioning well in that one area and we totally neglect most of the time all the other areas that are even as, if not more important to who a man is? All various forms of intimacy. I absolutely love kissing my wife, Nancy. I love holding her. I love enjoying intimacy with her. But over the years, we have found many wonderful ways with which she feels safe to express our intimacy. One of the things I've done, and this is just something I felt like God was leading me to do, and I'm not prescribing it for you. I'm not saying it's absolute truth. I'm just saying that because of my wife's violation of her younger years and the scars that she bears, I wanted her to be completely in control of our sexual activity, so I let her initiate. Now, that means a couple things. That means I don't get it near as enough as I want. But I let her initiate because that's when she feels safe. And I know when she initiates, I don't have to wonder if she's ready, But again, that's just one of the ways I choose to love my wife. You make your own mind up there, all right?
I have a question about
Go ahead.
What happens when it's brought back, because I tend to try to do the same thing, but it's brought back, well, you never do initiate, so you don't love me.
That's a catch-22, right?
I think you've done it by agreement. The question is, have you done it by agreement?
Right.
Because that's really the question. I mean,
Right.
It seems to me that the main thing is, and what this seems to all be about is how we really view our wives. I mean, the Bible says a man who finds a wife finds a good thing.
Mhm.
So I think we have a perverted way. We look at our wives as objects.
Right.
And that gets us into trouble. We've got to fix that problem with God delivering us in our mind and having the mind of Christ. I mean, ultimately, it just comes down to seeing that God created her just like He created us,
Mhm.
and He really wants us to see her as a gift. You wouldn't mistreat your gift.
Absolutely. And not knowing you, Jim, at all, and I'm not imposing on you what I think could be going on, but one thing I would look at if I was you, am I really being conscientious and intentional of showing her intimacy, meaningful intimacy in other ways that's non-sexual? Therefore she doesn't feel deprived of intimacy, and therefore doesn't want to be used sexually, but then says, how come you don't approach me sexually? It's kind of like, come here, but I'm going to hold you at arm's length, so it's kind of a delicate situation. Go ahead, Mike.
Kind of seems like this whole theme of this sex test is along those lines of honesty.
Yeah,
Honesty,
get that message?
intimacy,
Almost all the blanks of the word honest.
What are you looking for? What am I looking for? Reasoning together, so we have that, which we don't always,
Right.
our intentions haven't always been honest. We really want the cookie. We want to go around it a different way, kind of deceptively.
Right.
We think we need to be deceptive sometimes, so it gets us back to that as being the key to pretty much settling
Being honest with
every
each other.
area in our lives.
So what you could possibly suggest, Jim, and not implying he hasn't already done it, but just have a conversation with his wife saying, okay, I'm allowing you to initiate so you feel safe, but now you feel like you're not as attractive or desirable because I don't initiate. How can we figure this out? How can we work that out? Have that conversation. What does that
It'll
mean?
be fun working that
Yeah,
out.
yeah. Yeah, you know what a typical guy does, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So, don't even ask those questions, But I started something, I don't know, 7 years ago, where periodically, I wouldn't say weekly, but sometimes it is, depending on how my wife's feeling, what she's going through. I started the first time, let me tell you my exact reaction or how I did it. I went up to her and say, honey, how am I doing? How are we doing? I probably didn't make that face. I'm sure feeling it. Because there was a lot of years, if I asked that question, she answered honestly, I would have not liked the answer. But how do we know? Can't fix it if we know what's broke, So I asked that today, and I can't remember the last time I asked that where she brought something up. That doesn't mean I'm perfect as a husband. It just means that I think just asking the question and wanting the answer is the answer. That you're listening, that you're interested in what's going on inside of her, So good stuff, guys. Thanks for your contribution.
The amazing part of doing that is one day she'll ask you, how am I doing? And you get that intimate, honest
There you go.
back and forth.
There you go.
When she starts asking you that same type of a question,
There you
you guys are both desiring to please each other.
There you go. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Number 3. As a result of learning to include honesty with sexuality, a man may sense fear as old ways of coping are left behind. That's interesting because if you are using something, whether it's an activity, a hobby, golf, whatever, sex, pornography, alcohol, drugs, whatever the case is, to help you manage and soothe and help you manage the pain that's in your life, if a guy like me comes along and says, you got to give that up, there's a fear behind that. Because, none of us want to doubt God. If I'd ask you blatantly, how many believe what God offers is better than anything the world offers, we'd all say amen. But when somebody, a man of God or God, says give up, which is that which is not God's, you have this fear that what if God replaces it with doesn't work or doesn't do what the other thing does. And so you got to, the old ways of coping when they're left behind, you're going to sense a little fear. You're going to talk about that, going back to honesty. Number 4, experiences a new sense of power and freedom. I may get tarred and feathered. You guys might stand up and walk out, but I'm going to do something here that I very seldom do, and you might not have thought you were going to hear when you got together with me in an event like this. I'm going to teach you the joy of saying no to sex, which is totally counterintuitive, right? We, GoDaddy's successful because we men are wired, visually stimulated, we're sexual, we are testosterone based, we are initiators by nature, and for me to but you know what, isn't that the greatest power? Isn't that the greatest power of a recovering alcoholic when he reaches for the bottle and says, I don't have to grab it? Now that doesn't mean when your wife approaches you, say no. Ain't doing that, you know. But I mean, just saying no to that drive. Don't let it drive you. You know.
Amen.
You know, don't be in bondage to that instinct. That's the lie we have been sold, and many of us have bought, that we can't help it. You know, and it's hard, but it's not impossible. One of the other principles of knighthood, some of you probably have it in your bag, is that men do whatever it takes. Therefore, men do what is hard. Okay, so the fact it's hard is not a deal breaker. Genesis chapter 5 verse 1 says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." Now I know that I'm not a preacher, an expositor who likes to take a verse out of context, because a text out of context can become a pretext. But so the context of that statement was reverting back to the old legalistic Judaistic ways of earning favor with God through the law. But the principle applies to everything. If God has set you free, stay free. Don't allow yourself to be re-entangled again with the yoke of slavery. I'm going to show you a quote from one of our great presidents. Most people would rate him as one of the greatest. 32nd president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And you know, he's the only four-term president in United States history. In fact, when he died in office in his fourth term, they amended the Constitution to say that a man can only follow himself once in a general election to become president. He always thought about terms of meeting people's needs, you know, agree or disagree. The New Deal, Social Security, eliminated the gold standard. He led us through Pearl Harbor and World War II, most of it. And he had an understanding of what's really important. I love this quote from his. He said, "Confidence thrives on honesty, on honor, on the sacredness of obligations, on faithful protection, and on unselfish performance. Without them, it cannot live." When I read that quote, you know what I wanted to do? I wanted to take that word confidence and just make one word change. Sexuality thrives on honesty, on honor, on the sacredness of obligations, on faithful protection, and on unselfish performance. Without them, it cannot live. That's where my heart is today. And I think it'll change how you do life. Number 5, creates an opportunity for the partner to experience a resurrection in their love relationship. See, when Nancy feels safe, her sexuality is safe. If she doesn't feel safe, it's not safe. It doesn't have to feel safe to us, guys, but it does have to for our mates. In fact, I have a friend of mine, Keith Walker, who actually teaches on the DVDs that you can purchase to have a program in your church called Knights of the 21st Century. And he was talking to me one day. He said, you know how different men and women are wired? He said, we can be driving home after a really nice date, and you know everybody's kind of thinking about intimacy, you know, when we get home, and I accidentally run over a squirrel. She's done for 2 weeks. He said, I can watch a school bus full of kids go over a cliff, and I'm ready in 10 minutes. Now I know that's way oversimplified, but you know that's the way we're wired, right? And so when our wives feel safe, there is a resurrection in that love relationship. And then it also makes true manhood possible, because as long as we define manhood by sexual performance or the size of our reproductive organs, or, you know, I'm going to tell you a real true story. I was counseling one of my divorced ladies in my church a couple weeks ago at my house. My wife and I were together with her. And we weren't talking about this subject, but I listen to all kinds of conversations from women now through the filters of my involvement with men through Knights of the 21st Century, because they give me lessons I need, but I wished I didn't hear, you know what I mean? So she's 53, she's an attractive divorced woman, 53. She was telling me she went to the Giant grocery store. That's the name of our grocery store chain up there. It'd be like Kroger or Winn-Dixie or whatever down here. And
We have Giant.
you have Giant?
I think it's a different company.
Different Giant.
Okay, Giant Eagle, whatever.
Giant Eagle from Pittsburgh.
Okay, yeah, that's true. You from up there?
Been up there.
Yeah. So anyway, she's gone to the Giant, and I don't know, from the way she was telling me, I don't know if it was a guy that met her in one of the rows that worked at Giant, whether it was a stock boy or a guy bagging groceries. I'm not sure, but either way. And he's asking her out. He's 25. Hey, why don't you and me go out sometime? And she knows the boy's mother. Right? So she says to the guy, I'm older than your mother. He said, don't matter to me. I love mature women. I love a mature woman. He said, I know how to take care of a woman. I need to treat her well. I know how to treat her well, and I'm not making this up, guys. He says to this woman in the grocery store, and if it matters to you, I'm pretty well hung, too. Now that's despicable. I mean, it's bad enough that guys think that, but they think it's a selling point for a date. That's kind of like a real extreme example of how far we've gone wrong. That guy, and I'm not judging because, you know, a lot of males today have never had healthy manhood, masculinity, sexuality modeled for them. So I'm not judging the boy, but I'm telling you, he's not a man. That's not how men think. It was totally disrespectful to engage a woman in conversation in the store and mention your penis. Come on, guys. There's something wrong with that, all right? Number 7. This is an interesting concept. Has God clapping when you associate honesty with sexuality? Now what does that mean? There's nothing more delightful to God than for him to clap on your behalf because you have connected honesty with your sexuality and you are exerting that and utilizing that amazing gift that he's given you in a way that he can bless. Bobby mentioned several times in his message this morning that something, again, and I had several hammer moments at that time. He said that God won't bless what he hasn't ordained. Right? Did you hear that? That hit you too, right? So you got a hammer too. So God can bless our sexuality when we associate honesty with it. Let's go to letter C. Honest sexuality begins with self-honesty. Honesty includes, number 1, accepting his gender needs and viewing his sexuality in light of who he is as a man of God. Okay, so share honestly. How do I get to a place where my sexuality is so in line with God that I'll be honest, and that honesty will drive me. I control it, it doesn't control me. All right? Genesis chapter 5, verse 2. He created them male and female and blessed them. So we are different. A woman is created a sexual creature just like a man is, but a totally different wiring process, okay, for all kinds of reasons, all right? Number 2, understanding that to truly say yes to his sexuality, he first needs to say no to his unhealthy sexual impulses. That's why struggling with pornography, it's hard to be honest with any woman. You bring pornography into your life, it's your marriage bed suffers. Because I guarantee you that there are few, if any, women that will do real time what the porn star does online or in a video or DVD. She's being paid to make all kinds of sounds, all kinds of motions that 99.99% of the time she does not feel or mean. She is acting for her target audience. And a lot of times I've counseled couples for a lot of years, and sometimes they'll come into me, and the bottom line is their sexual life is starving and struggling because the man expects his wife to be a porn star. That's not what it's about, guys. It's not about you. It's not about me. All right? Titus chapter 2, verse 10-11 said, "For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men." It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age. I believe that. Number 3, assessing the level of sexual control demonstrated in his past and limiting his involvement in sexually stimulating situations. Okay? So, I'm not going to tell you how you live your life, but I'm just going to tell you some of my priorities. If I want to keep my male sexuality on target and in a safe zone, probably shouldn't be having lunch at Hooters. I mean, just the name of the place.
Accountability.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, you got to learn to say no to some of those things. All right. Number 4, recognizing that intimate communication is of higher value than genital performance. Now, I'm about to say something to show you something on the screen in just a second. I hope it doesn't get outside this room. I may not ever get invited back to another ISI conference, but I want to show you a man's most erotic organ, according to a woman. Really set you up, didn't I? I let you down too, didn't I? Some of you. We don't listen. How many times have I counseled couples where the wife would say,
he wants sex every night, but he never wants to talk to me. I really believe God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We ought to listen to at least twice as much as we speak. Right? He that hath an ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Right? And so your manhood is better measured by intimate conversation than by the sweat equity of sex any day of the week. Let's go to number 5. Guarding against the sexuality being used for meaning outside of the context of an intimate love with a committed partner. And if that statement seems a little too ambiguous, let me tell you what I believe that is. One man with one woman for one life in the context of marriage covenant. As a pastor, one of the new normals that I struggle with is folks that say shacking up without covenant is okay, you know, and I'm a passive kind of guy. I don't like to get in people's faces, and I think people need to be held accountable, and we do. I just don't like it, and it's like it was bad enough I had to sell that concept with the unchurched community when I started in ministry 33 years ago. Now I got to convince my own people, you know. Well, that's old-fashioned, and we really, really love each other. Well, if you love each other that much, then do it right, you know. Enter into the covenant of marriage, where there are no escape clauses. You can just bail easy with no physical or financial repercussions.
Yeah,
Right?
Steve, they have
Go
to
ahead.
deal with the Old Testament and New Testament. They consider the entire Bible to be old-fashioned if it's not what's going on current. So they have to decide if it's being up to what's going on now or being true to the Word.
That's what happens when you look at the Bible through the prism of culture versus looking at culture through the prism of the Word. It's like the tail wagging the dog today. You're absolutely right, brother. Letter D. Honest sexuality includes being honest with one's sexual partner. I mentioned that I will be honest with Nancy. I'll share what I'm feeling. We're having great conversations lately. I will listen as she shares what she's feeling. By the way, we're doing okay with time. I got to tell you a couple stories here. Well, one actually. There's this guy in my church, and I'll even give you the last name because you'll never, more than likely will never meet him. And if you do, you know, that would not be cool. Well, actually, I've told this in front of the church with his permission, so I guess he wouldn't mind me. His name is Jim Winkleman, right? And he's married to a lady named Gloria. They're just a wonderful couple, just heavily involved in my church, real blessings to us. They're real servants, just involved. In fact, Gloria is one of our team leaders for our Kid Men program. And he told me the story one day in a Sunday school class where, now Gloria is an average looking woman. You know, she's got some extra weight on her. She has a lazy eye that goes cross on her a lot. She wears glasses. Just a sweet woman. The love of Jim's life, right? So paint this picture in your mind. They're both sitting on a couch watching a movie where Halle Berry is the star. In the middle of the movie, his wife Gloria opines verbally out loud, God, I wish I looked like her. Now Jim has a moment here to really step up and be a knight in shining armor. But the best he could say was, me too. So, there may be...
He needed that box you tried to sell at the beginning.
There may be some limits to our honesty when the honesty does more. Now, if she said, Jim, do you wish I looked like Halle Berry? Then he's got an integrity issue going if he says no when he really means yes, right? But just leave it alone, dude. That's like, you know, he should have said, why would I want her when I have you? Simple answer, right? Not commenting on outward beauty, we're just saying, I've got the love of my life. Doesn't matter what she looks like. She's just an actress to me, right? So anyway, I want you to enjoy that. All right, number 1, a man expresses love that he has already established for his partner and does not use sexuality to create love. Remember? A woman gives sex to get love. A man gives love to get sex. Let's not do that, all right? Number 2, a man recognizes the short-term biologically intoxicating nature of sexual behaviors that occur early in the relationship. He waits approximately 2 years to determine whether his attraction is truly of a long-term nature. Now, this is just plain old physiological and psychological reasoning, and what that basically means. You know, I think it's healthy if a couple
agrees to be engaged for at least 2 years before they're married. I know that doesn't happen much anymore, but I'll tell you why. When you become infatuated with someone, which is usually the initial attraction, you just become infatuated. You know, you're gaga. You know, you think about when I first met my wife, you know, and she lived at 335 Walnut Street. I lived at 339. She was raised in that house. I moved in to rent the house on the corner. My mom did, actually. And, you know, in the last year and a half before we got married. So I was the new kid on the block, right? And you know, so when I saw her walking across the street, there was that amazing attraction, you know? And we would have dinner together with her mom at her house after she got home from work. And until her mom said, if he's going to keep eating here, I'm going to have to up your ward. And so I stopped doing that. But we would stay there, and it was about 9 o'clock. We're watching TV, sitting there holding hands, you know, and you know, all this kind of stuff going on, you know. And well, we better get to bed. Okay. So kissed her goodnight. Ran out of my house, ran into her house, into my house, up the stairs, into my room where I had a phone. I picked up the phone, called her up, and we talked another 20 minutes. And then after we were 20, we really should get to bed. It's getting late. We're going to regret it tomorrow. Yeah, you're right. You hang up first. No, you hang up first. I'm serious. I played this. You know, it sounds so childish and all. But what I'm talking about, I was infatuated with this woman. Let me tell you something, guys. Infatuation is not what brought this marriage 44 years along. It's commitment. It's dedication. It's adjusting. You know? And so all I'm saying, especially young guys out there, if there's someone in your life that's doing that for you now, you got to make sure it's not just that intoxicating nature of that initial infatuation that's driving you towards marriage, because that's going to go away. It'll come and go, but it'll go away soon, you know, and so be careful about that. Right, number 3, a man knows in order to be known by his partner, he communicates honestly both before and after his sexual experience all of who he is. So again, it goes back to being intimate, all areas of life, not just the one. Number 4, a man shares his sexuality with his partner by listening to her needs, seeking her permission for sexual actions that are desired, and sacrificially securing an intimate, satisfying, and loving experience for her. Guys, if you want a certain thing in the bedroom and your wife says, I don't like that, never ask her again. Never ask her again. Even if she comes back because you've been a real good boy and wants to reward you. Here's another moment to be a hero. Honey, I know you don't like that. I'm not going to ask you to do that no more. My God, what a powerful statement of her worth that you're giving to her. That your feelings and your desires are not a number one in your relationship, right? Letter E, a man attaches a healthy meaning to the sexual acts he has with his partner. Sex is healthy if it's honest. If it's dishonest, it's not. And letter F, a man expresses his sexuality through different forms of touch and looks for opportunities to discover new forms of communication with his partner. I learned this the hard way. It's kind of, you know, isn't it amazing? Some of us guys, we need 2x4 across the head moments sometimes to get something, right? It was in my first church in Lewistown, Pennsylvania. It was 1984. I was full-time pastor now for just 4 years. And my wife is at the sink at the parsonage washing dishes. And I came up from behind her and just put my arms around her shoulders and put my face in her neck and just pecked her on the neck. To which she said, that felt so nice. And the first thing I thought, maybe I got more than that. And then, you know, kids weren't around, so. And I got to a certain point, and she said, can't you just hold me ever without molesting me? Man, you know, it was like a powerful 2x4 moment for me. That was a hammer moment. You know, that, again, I was so much spandex male back then, I'm thinking, you know, if I'm not really, you know, ringing all of her sexual bells a couple, 3, 4 times a week, then I'm a failure as a man, and it's so not it, man. Find ways to non-sexually touch a woman. And if it doesn't lead to anything else, make sure you don't pout about it. And, you know, I tell guys they pout and they say, no, man, I don't pout. Listen, last time you went to bed and you rolled over and put your arm around your wife and she said, not tonight, I'm tired. You rolled over and curled up in a fetal position. You may not have sucked your thumb, but you, I know I have. You know, so, I'm going to show you one more clip from the movie What Women Want. Or we got one more point here. I missed. I'm sorry. A man views sexuality as a gift from God and actively works to protect his gift from distortion. That's just it. That's the bottom line. I wish and I pray, in fact we will pray when we're done here, that every one of us in this room from this day forward, when we hear the word sex, honesty is the first word that pops in your mind. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll automatically live honestly with your sexuality, but you'll begin to make the equation. That I'm going to equate honesty with my sexuality, and it has all kinds of connotations. Okay, one more visit from Nick Marshall. Now, those of you who saw the movie know towards the end of the movie, you know the story, right? How many of you saw the movie? Okay, so you know that he fell in the bathtub with a hairdryer, and now he can hear what women are thinking. And by the way, isn't it interesting? He has the power to hear everything women are thinking. Finally, a man is listening. What's he listening for? To steal his boss's job and to get into every other woman's pants. It's like, wow, it's just so ignoble, But at the end, he realizes he really missed his opportunity with Darcy, the boss that he cut her legs out from under because he knew her thoughts, stole her ideas, and he got the promotion and she got fired, all right? And he got it. So there is hope for us. Watch this scene for a minute.
What am I doing? She's not in the refrigerator. Wonder if it's too late to go over there. No, of course it's not too late. It's never too late to do the right thing. That's what I'll do. I'll go over there and I'll do the right thing.
Hello?
Hi. It's me. Oh, I'm glad I found you. Can I come up? Darcy? I need to...
Hey. You need to what? It's 1 o'clock in the morning.
I need to talk to you.
Okay.
Thanks. So, you sleep here now?
Thought I might as well give it a try before I have to sell the place.
Sell it. You're not selling the place.
Can't afford to keep it. I don't have a job.
You know, you ought to try returning some of your phone calls. You got your job back.
Oh, do I? Yes, you're a real riot. You know that?
It's true. Dan told me so himself.
Why would he tell you that? I didn't do the job that he hired me to do. Even I don't blame him for firing me. Look, come on in. I don't have any chairs, but if you want to...
What if I told you that you did everything you were hired to do? Everything. But that someone was sabotaging you. Picking your brain and swiping your ideas. Well, you never even knew it, did you?
How was that possible?
Oh, trust me, it's possible.
Who would do such an awful thing?
I would. I was a dope with a corner office, and when you came with the job I was supposed to have, I mean, it didn't matter to me that you were better at it than me. You earned it more than I did. As far as I was concerned, it was mine, and I was going to do anything I could to get it back. And so I took advantage of you in the worst
everything you're saying is true, if I really have my job back, then I think you're fired.
Oh, Dan, I never really thought about it from that angle. Not that I don't deserve it. I do do it. I'm stuttering. Now I feel kind of embarrassed that I told you I didn't mean to be rescued. That's fine.
That's it?
I don't want that to be it. I don't want that to be it at all.
And don't let a little thing like me firing you stand in your way. I didn't know what to react to first. Hey, newsflash, I took the wrong road. What kind of knight in shining armor would I be if the man I love needs rescuing and I just let him walk out my door?
My hero.
Never really looked at it from that angle, but I like movies where there's redemption at some point. You know, where a guy makes a turnaround and steps up and becomes the man God created. And I know that's not a biblical concept. I mean, context. You know, they're not Christian, but I think you get to feel that when you equate honesty with your sexuality, guys. It just changes the whole game. It changes the whole game. I want to pray in about 3-4 minutes so you guys can go to lunch. But anybody want to make a comment or ask another question before we do that? That'd be more than appropriate.
Interesting role reversal at the end. Usually the guy's in knight in shining armor,
Yeah.
rescues the day, you know, and
Yeah.
he's his hero.
Right. He mentioned the role reversal. I meant to say that when the clip was over. That's the one part that made me kind of uncomfortable. Right? You know, women are to be rescued not because they're helpless, but like Adam this morning. He should, what Adam should have done is stepped in between Eve and the serpent and say, dude, I don't know if you're going to take me out or not, but if you're going to get to her, you got to get through me first, So that's what I mean by rescue, protecting. And she's the nice time. So it's not just role reversal. It's confusing, But I think all you guys are smart enough to figure out that that's not what we're advocating. Let women be knights in shining armor, and we be those damsels in distress. But that's totally uncool. Somebody else have a question or comment? You, sir.
I mean, the basic common principle that she's a person. That he at the end he made it be known that he realized women weren't just objects anymore. They were people to be accepted for who they were, and there was a lot more to it.
Absolutely, man. That's so awesome. You know what? Guys need to stop looking at women as body parts and looking into their eyes and seeing the whole amazing creature that God made them to be. That's the noble way to doing it. I see another hand back here. Somebody, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the sexual experience, I think once we really realize that, first and foremost, we've got to love the Lord God with all our soul, mind, body, and strength. And once we are, understand that and are in a deepening relationship with God, we really can get what this is all about. And it's a far more spiritual act than it is physical. I'm convinced of that.
It is.
And there's just so much more to it once we get that we really get to really what it means to enjoy it.
Absolutely.
And I've been married, I'm not bragging, but I've been married 24 years, and I thank God for that.
You need to brag.
Had I not really, understood first and foremost loving God, putting Him first, because without that, I don't know how to love my wife. I won't be sensitive to that. And if I give to get, it's just all wrong.
It is. And I'll get to you a second. You know, when you made that statement about it's a spiritual thing, you know, what the Apostle Paul said in Corinthians were, you know, when you give that part of yourself away indiscriminately to many partners, you break off a piece of yourself and leave it there. I mean, so what does that, so it has to be more than a biological function. And that's why we see so many guys, and sometimes even women, who we have trained to think themselves as sex objects, that they're empty. You keep breaking, there's a piece over here, piece over there, piece over there, piece over there, and what you give away, you can't get back, you know? So, you're absolutely right. Yes, sir.
I'm coming up on 13 years of marriage myself, and
Way to go, man.
I'll never forget me and my wife were first dating. One of the first things she ever told me was that sometimes women just want to be listened to, and men have a tendency to always want to fix everything. We're fixers by nature, and sometimes they don't want things to be fixed. They have a solution in mind. They just want to be heard. As our best friends, we should be willing to sit there and listen to their issues.
That's so amazingly true, man. Thanks for sharing that. You know, have any of you in this room had the same experience I have where I fixed something for my wife and thought I was a hero when she realized I fixed it? She was really ticked off at me. Did you ever have an experience like that? You know, real quick story. I had a lady in my church who was abusing my wife. And I found out down the road that the reason why she was always hostile to my wife is that she actually admitted to someone that she thought she should be the pastor's wife and not my wife. Okay, so enough said, right? And so she came home from a woman's ministry meeting that she was the leader of, and she was totally beat up and crying. What's the matter? Corrine did it again. She said, I said, that's enough. Didn't even talk to my wife about it. I didn't listen. I just said, I'm going to fix it. So I called Corrine into my office next day, and I just, you're not going to abuse my wife anymore. And I come home like this, you know. Just so you know, I fixed that problem, baby. What problem's that? With Corrine. She said, what did you do? And I told her, she didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. And it's like, oh, you just wanted me to listen. So now, there are occasions when they do want us to fix, but the only way you know that is by listening, right? And sometimes asking. So when she shares something with me now, I say, do you want me to fix this or just listen? You know, be specific, you know?
We don't know.
We don't know, man. It's tough. Tough to read them, you know? Yes, sir. Thanks for sharing that, by the way.
I've never been married, but, you know, my spiritual journey now is to not bring any of that crud into a marriage, and you know, the piece about breaking off stuff with this person, and so I deal a lot with condemnation on myself, and just kind of staying pure and staying on that path, and to not delve back into that selfish, you know, because I have been with a lot of other women, and you know, I know God is trying to fill my heart now because of all that emptiness, but just, you got any advice to kind of, you know, just stay on that path to victory, sustained, you know, because I know the enemy, you know, he tries to get in there and fill my head with all of this junk, you know, because I am connecting with God, because I am staying, you know, I have been pure, and just I guess you have any advice on keeping me
I
on
think,
that path?
first of all, you're a hero, man.
Amen.
You know,
Amen.
go ahead and encourage him. I know you didn't share that to get that, but that's what heroes deserve, you know. The phrase that I've used for years, I just want to speak into it, it just came to me when I heard your story. You can't go back and make a brand new start, my friend, but you can start where you are and make a brand new end. And that's what you're doing. You stay the course. I believe you can rediscover your virginity. That the next time will be like the first time. But there's a process of healing and becoming whole in this area of your sexuality. It must take place before you reach out and re-engage that part of your life with a new mate. You know what I mean? Way to go, man. Way to go. I'm proud of you. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to ask for when we pray, to pray for the young. I'm 20 years old, and I'm just starting to get back into my walk with Christ, and it's not easy. So, and I know it can't be easy for those younger than me or at my same age, so please pray for the youth.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
This is a quick point. The best place to practice honesty is before you get married. So you really have an excellent opportunity.
Absolutely. Take some of these principles, and when you start courting someone with the intention of life partnership,
I am courting someone with that intention.
you know,
so it's being
use some
open,
of
honest,
use some of these
all that
points
stuff.
and principles as a guideline for discussions you have with your future mate. That, man, you know, there are going to be a lot of guys that'll envy you someday. For how you
Hopefully,
have
when I get through my junk, I can help some. You know, maybe he can use me. Hopefully.
Absolutely. We are comforted with God in all of our circumstances so that we can comfort others with the same comfort we've received from God.
Amen.
I believe that. And does I see one more? Anybody else?
Yeah,
Go ahead, sir.
just what you just said. When you get through with your junk, God's going to use you. He's using, it's something that God is telling me right now. He used Samson. Abraham was a liar, right? How many times does God use us so imperfect? We do the stupidest things. God is using you. He's going to use all of us. He uses me. He used me when I was ingrained in pornography. He used me to lead worship for the first people. I regret. I look back at my life and I'm like, God, how much more effective could you have used me if I didn't have that in my life? But He was using me when I was in the middle of it. And now that I've brought it up, 4 years ago today, when I came to this conference, the first thing I did was I went home and I confessed my sin to my wife.
Wow.
And that honesty, everything else, she didn't talk to me for a couple of days because she needed to process that. But that changed my marriage. That changed my life.
Awesome, man.
God
Another
will
hero.
give you the exit signs to escape every temptation. To give you exit signs, and you'll choose whether to follow or not. There are times I didn't choose to follow. I'm trying to get busy with this woman, and all through my mind is, all to Jesus I surrender. They put a hymn in my mind. I'm trying to do wrong, but He'll bring back a song, a hymn you grew up with, and to you have to come to grips with that. Say, Lord, let me get out of here. I know I don't want to do that. And it helps you to get strong with that. He'll give you exit signs. Look for the exit signs when you feel you've been pulled in that way, and then take the exit. So He'll always have a way out. Always have a way out.
Not like Joseph.
So you're saying God will kill the moment, huh?
Thank God.
Thank God.
I don't know if it's say He kills it. He gives you the choice.
Yeah, I was being facetious, but that's the way it is. I mean, that's one thing. Once you know the truth, you know, it forever ruins the life that you lived in deception. Because you're always sinning against your conscience now. You know, revealed, educated conscience. Now I know this is wrong, but I want to do it anyway. When I got saved in 1975, about a year later, I backslid for about 6 months, and it's a long story why I did that. There was no good reason. I just did it. And all the stuff that I gave up when I got saved, I went back to thinking, okay, go back. And none of it delivered anymore, because I know once you have the real, the genuine, the counterfeit is revealed for what it is.
Yeah, that's right. So you can't go back to the other life.
You can. It's just it's going to be more disappointing, more frustrating. So thanks, guys. You are awesome, man. And lay hands on that young man for him specifically, but let him be prayed for also in proxy for all the other young men like him are struggling in the sex-crazed generation and a GoDaddy generation who's trying to live a pure life, and that God would protect him. And then we'll close with a quick prayer about how God can help all of us to keep honesty connected with our sexuality from this day forward. All right? Lay hands on him. What's your name, sir?
Matthew Davis.
Matthew. Nice to meet you. Lay hands on. Could you lay hands on? Lord, we pray for Matthew and every young man his age, around his age, that is struggling in a sex-crazed culture, that wants to drag your phenomenally beautiful gift into the sewer, and all the lies that the enemy uses to perpetuate that myth. And we just ask you, Lord, to constantly bombard Matthew's heart and mind with truth.
Yes.
And when you know the truth will not only make you free, but it'll keep you free. And so, God, I just pray that you would help him surround purity around his heart, because this whole thing of sexual purity is not about managing a body part. It's about the heart of a man that is so devoted to God and so wanting to please him among him, even above himself, that he seeks the high road even when the low road is popular, and even when the low road might for a moment look more attractive. And so, God, give him the courage to say no to his sexuality when it's the appropriate answer, and give him purity in his heart and his mind throughout the rest of his days. And for all of us, guys, Lord, I pray that from this day forward, when we hear the word sex or think of sex, that the word honesty would pop into our mind, and that we would start to process and unpack that very volatile issue with honesty in mind. Honesty with our mates, honesty with ourselves, honesty with you, God, bringing our needs to you in honesty and truth. Thank you for this time together. Bless my brothers, and we do it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thanks, guys. You're a blessing.
Well, men, thanks for listening. I trust this message has provided practical encouragement to you in your journey with Christ. Please visit noblewarriors.org to learn more about how Noble Warriors works to help churches reach and build men. God bless you, friend.